Welcome to today's deep dive. We've gathered a truly fascinating stack of sources for you to look at today.
Yeah, it's quite the collection of reporting.
Right. We are pulling from investigative reports by the CBC, CTV, the Independent, the Taipei Times, and the Brussels Times.
And the topic is, it really sounds like fiction.
It does. It's a real-life 2026 espionage thriller taking place at the very heart of the Western military alliance. A Canadian intern has just been arrested at NATO's top military headquarters in Belgium.
Accused of spying for a third country and belonging to a criminal organization, which is just wild.
Exactly. So for you listening, our mission today is to unpack the timeline of this arrest, expose the, frankly, alarming blind spots in national security clearances, and understand the modern intelligence playbook that makes junior staff members such highly valuable targets.
Right, because the playbook has definitely changed.
It really has. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with this whole illusion of the fortress. When you picture a high-security military installation, your mind naturally goes to physical barriers, really?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
You picture blast-proof concrete, razor wire, armed guards at vehicle checkpoints.
Yeah, exactly. We assume that if a place looks impenetrable from the outside, it must be completely secure on the inside.
It's a very human assumption.
Yeah.
We equate physical fortification with absolute security because we just like to see the walls keeping the threats out.
Right.
But when you examine how modern intelligence gathering actually functions, those concrete walls become, well, mostly irrelevant.
Because the threat is already inside.
Exactly. We're looking at a security landscape today where the most critical vulnerabilities are not scaling defenses, they're badging in through the front door with a coffee in hand.
Wow.
While spy stories sound like they belong in a Hollywood script, the bureaucratic failures that allow them to happen are very real, very mundane, and deeply concerning.
That brings us to exactly where this specific breach went down. We're talking about SHAPE, which stands for Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe, located in Mons, Belgium.
Right, and we should clarify what SHAPE actually is. For all intents and purposes, it is the central nervous system of the entire 32-nation NATO alliance.
Because the political headquarters is in Brussels, right?
Yes. Brussels is where the ambassadors and diplomats meet to discuss policy, but SHAPE in Mons is where the actual military officials plan and command joint strategy, tactics, and active operations. It is the operational heart of the alliance.
So getting access there is a massive deal. Which brings us to the suspect, Biwei Zhang. She is a Canadian national of Chinese origin.
And her academic background is actually in economics, but she was operating at SHAPE as a systems engineer intern.
Right, a systems engineer intern. And just last week, Belgian authorities, acting on a tip directly from NATO's internal security services, raided her home and her workplace, taking her into custody.
The specific behavior that triggered NATO's internal tripwires is incredibly telling, too.
Yeah, what did they actually catch her doing?
Well, according to the reporting, Zhang displayed what investigators characterized as an excessive curiosity about her colleagues.
Which is, a little vague, but a red flag.
Right, but beyond that, she was allegedly entering areas of the facility where she had absolutely no authorization to be, and making claims about accessing files that fell completely outside of her professional remit as an intern.
If we bring this down to a normal corporate environment, it's the equivalent of the new marketing intern constantly asking the chief financial officer for the company's master bank passwords.
Yes.
Except instead of a corporate bank account, we are talking about global military strategy.
What's fascinating here is the specific involvement of the Belgian Computer Crime Unit, the CCU, in these raids.
Why does that matter so much?
Because when the CCU is brought in, alongside traditional local forensic teams, investigators are not looking for physical folders stuffed into a briefcase. They are hunting for digital exfiltration.
Ah, so they're looking at the network.
Right. They're going to clone every hard drive she touched, analyze network traffic logs, and look for packet-sniffing software. They want to know if classified documents or sensitive operational data were quietly copied and transmitted out of the network.
Now, officially, a SHAPE spokesperson, U.S. Colonel Martin L. O'Donnell, stated that there is no indication that NATO operations, command arrangements, or ongoing tasks have been compromised.
Which, what they have to say.
Right. They are projecting a very firm, business-as-usual image to the press.
You would expect nothing less from a military alliance. Maintaining public confidence and projecting strength is essential.
You don't just air your dirty laundry immediately.
Exactly. You never broadcast the specific nature of your vulnerabilities to the world especially while a forensic damage assessment is still in its absolute infancy.
But the legal reality happening behind closed doors paints a starkly different picture. Zhang has already had a closed-door hearing in Belgium where she was explicitly denied bail.
That is a huge detail.
Yeah. The pretrial chamber ruled she must remain in pretrial detention, and she's required to appear in court monthly for the first 3 months.
That level of judicial strictness strongly suggests the Belgian Federal Prosecutor's Office believes they have substantial digital or physical evidence, or they view her as an extreme flight risk.
Precisely. They do not hold a junior intern without bail unless the perceived threat to national security or the risk of her disappearing across a border is significant.
Right, they don't mess around with this stuff.
But that legal severity brings up a massive logical gap for me. Knowing the charges she is facing and the level of operational access she had, how on earth did she get a security badge in the first place?
Well, that is the multi-million-dollar security question.
Yeah.
And it requires understanding how NATO operates.
Because NATO doesn't actually vet the interns themselves, right?
Exactly. The host organization, in this case NATO in Belgium, does not conduct the primary background checks for international interns. They operate on a federated trust model.
So they rely on the home countries.
Yes. They rely entirely on the member nations to vet their own citizens before sending them over to Europe.
Okay, so as a Canadian citizen, Zhang was screened back home, and that process involves the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS, and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP. Ultimately, Global Affairs Canada makes the final call on granting that clearance.
Under normal circumstances, that is a rigorous process. It can take upwards of 6 months to a year.
Yeah, it's not a quick background check.
Not at all. It involves deep background checks, comprehensive financial audits to look for unexplained wealth, and personal interviews.
Yet, when CBC reporters pulled her federal court records, a massive contradiction appeared. She actually has a history of working for the Canadian federal government.
Right. She had prior stints.
Yeah. She previously completed stints at the Canadian Space Agency and Statistics Canada. On paper, that paints a picture of a trusted, experienced young professional already operating within federal agencies.
But the court filings reveal something entirely different.
Completely different. Zhang previously applied for a job with the Canada Border Services Agency, the CBSA. And she didn't just apply once. She applied using 2 entirely different identities.
Biwei Zhang and Claire Zhang.
Yes, and used different email addresses for each application.
Which means she ran 2 parallel applications through a federal law enforcement recruitment process. To do that, you are actively trying to manipulate or bypass the preliminary screening algorithms of a border agency.
And she was caught doing it. The Public Service Commission of Canada investigated and formally found her guilty of committing fraud during the recruitment process. This ruling came down on June 19th, 2023.
And she even tried to fight it, right?
Yeah, she tried to challenge that fraud finding in federal court the following month, and a federal judge dismissed her challenge. So the fraud ruling was permanently etched onto her record in the summer of 2023.
Let the timeline of that sink in.
Hmm.
This was a formalized federal fraud finding less than 3 years ago.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If I lie on my resume at a standard corporate job, I am fired. Right. How does someone with a literal federal fraud ruling for using dual identities get a green light from CSIS to work at NATO's Supreme Military Command?
It is baffling. I mean, it exposes a massive catastrophic failure in interdepartmental data sharing.
Like they just didn't talk to each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What we're seeing here is the danger of entrenched bureaucratic silos and legacy IT systems. A human resources fraud finding within the Public Service Commission likely lives on a completely different database architecture than the national security databases used by CSIS or the RCMP.
Oh, wow. So because of outdated tech, it just slips through.
Outdated tech and also strict federal privacy laws that often prevent different government branches from freely sharing applicant data. The systems simply do not talk to each other. An HR violation did not trigger an intelligence red flag.
It is the equivalent of installing a state-of-the-art alarm system on the front door of your house, but forgetting to wire the sensors on the back window to the main control panel.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
The diplomatic fallout from this has to be severe.
Oh, it is already causing waves. Roger Hilton, a security analyst with the defense think tank GLOBSSEC, pointed out that this creates a massive cascade of issues for Canada.
Because now everyone is side-eyeing Canadian intelligence.
Absolutely. Hilton noted that his own basic NATO clearance took over 6 months. Now every allied nation is looking at Ottawa and asking if they can trust Canadian vetting in the future.
Right. It forces 31 other nations to wonder if this is a one-off error or if the entire Canadian security apparatus is structurally compromised.
which prompted Public Safety Minister Gary Anandasangari to stand in front of the press and vow they will get to the bottom of it and investigate their own security screening
I
processes.
kind of have to at this point.
Yeah, and furthermore, Canadian intelligence now has to execute a full damage assessment, tracing back every single thing she touched while working at the Canadian Space Agency and Statistics Canada. The investigation doesn't start in Belgium, it starts in Ottawa.
So the vetting failure explains the mechanics of how the door was left unlocked. But I want to challenge the strategic logic here for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
If an adversarial intelligence agency discovers a golden loophole in Canadian security vetting, why burn that opportunity on a 20-something intern? Why not push a senior executive or a career diplomat through that blind spot?
It's a fair question.
I just struggle to see the geopolitical ROI, the return on investment of an intern. Is a junior intern really worth the geopolitical risk? They don't have access to the nuclear launch code, so why risk an international incident?
It seems counterintuitive because we are conditioned by movies to think of high-value targets as generals or cabinet ministers. But Anthony Saters, a researcher from Carleton University who consults on youth engagement in defense, offers a crucial counter-perspective.
Which is what?
It comes down to vulnerability and accessibility. A senior official has a 247 security detail. They have counterintelligence agencies actively monitoring their communications, their travel, their finances.
Right. They're hardened targets who are constantly watched by the very fortress they inhabit.
Exactly. But an intern is largely invisible to the counterintelligence apparatus.
Unwatched and probably a bit overwhelmed.
And crucially, young staffers just starting out are often burdened by massive student debt, high housing costs, and general financial insecurity.
Ah, so they're susceptible to financial manipulation.
Precisely. This makes them significantly more vulnerable to coercion by foreign intelligence handlers. If a foreign agent offers to quietly wipe out $80,000 of student debt in exchange for a few seemingly harmless weekly updates, that is a compelling lever to pull on a vulnerable 23-year-old.
I get that, but I still question the immediate payoff. If you are paying off an intern's debt, you are getting low-level administrative spreadsheets.
And this is where the concept of the long game comes in, which Roger Hilton from GLOBSEC emphasizes.
Okay, what does the long game look like here?
Intelligence agencies, particularly from major adversarial nations, are not just planning for next week. They operate on generational timelines.
Oh, wow. So they're looking decades ahead.
Yeah. You invest in a young asset early, you solve their financial problems, you instruct them to keep their head down, be perfectly agreeable, and stay completely under the radar for a decade. You let them build a legitimate, untainted career.
So 10 or 15 years down the line, when that agreeable young intern eventually rises through the bureaucratic ranks to become a deputy foreign minister or the head of a political military delegation,
The intelligence payoff is astronomical.
you essentially own a piece of the senior leadership from the ground up.
Exactly. It is terrifyingly patient.
I see the value in the long game, for sure. But I have to push back on the premise that an intern only has future value, especially in this specific case. We cannot ignore her actual job title.
Which was systems engineer.
Right. She was not a policy intern drafting press releases. She was a systems engineer.
That is a vital technical distinction.
In the modern digital workplace, the person who builds or maintains the IT infrastructure frequently has more unrestricted access than the CEO.
Oh, without a doubt.
A systems engineer intern might not have the security clearance to read a top-secret strategic document about troop movements, but they possess the administrative privileges to migrate the server where that document is stored.
You can see the architecture of the network.
Yes. Their technical access allows them to completely bypass traditional hierarchical security limits.
Which perfectly contextualizes why the computer crime unit was brought in to raid her office.
Right, because of what she could do, technically.
If she was utilizing her engineering credentials to map the network architecture, identify vulnerable nodes, or access servers outside her purview, she represents an immediate high-level threat, regardless of her junior status.
Like knowing where the security cameras are blind?
Exactly. If you map the plumbing of a building, you know exactly where to introduce the poison later.
That brings us to a sobering reality. This specific incident with the Canadian intern is not an isolated vulnerability.
Not at all.
It is part of a much broader, highly aggressive intelligence war that is escalating across the entire NATO alliance. The threat landscape has shifted dramatically in recent years. In 2021, NATO officially took the step of labeling China a security challenge, putting them alongside the active historical threats posed by Russia.
Right, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, you can see exactly why NATO is sounding the alarm.
Yep.
It is a constant, multifaceted barrage of infiltration attempts designed to test the perimeter at every conceivable level.
The recent timeline provided in our sources proves that point perfectly. Just this year, in 2026, a Greek Air Force pilot named Christos Filas was arrested.
Yeah, that case was alarming.
He was caught photographing and transmitting classified NATO military documents to China.
And the methodology there is critical. He wasn't mailing physical photographs, He was utilizing specialized encryption software provided directly by Chinese intelligence.
Wow, so he was fully equipped by them.
Yeah, this type of software is designed to cloak exfiltrated data within normal, everyday internet traffic. It makes it incredibly difficult for standard network security to detect. He was only exposed because the CIA intercepted communications and tipped off Greek authorities.
Then also this year, you have Viktor Labin, a Russian spy operating out of Uccle, Belgium. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison for illegally exporting goods to Russia via shadowy front companies located in places like Turkey and Kazakhstan.
Which bypasses international sanctions entirely.
Exactly, and we can trace this pattern back even further. In October 2021, NATO had to physically expel 8 Russian diplomats from their mission for operating as covert intelligence officers under diplomatic cover.
And the Kremlin responded by shutting down their entire mission to NATO.
But perhaps the most damaging historical example in our stack of sources is Herman Sim. In 2008, he was the chief of the Estonian Defense Ministry's security department. He was caught and sentenced to 12.5 years in prison because he had been feeding highly classified NATO secrets to Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service for over a decade.
When you look at those examples together, the adversary strategy becomes incredibly clear. They are probing the NATO alliance from every conceivable angle, exploiting any available vector.
They're just looking for any crack in the wall.
Exactly. You have a high-ranking Estonian defense chief embedded for a decade. You have a seasoned Greek fighter pilot with specialized encryption. You have Russian intelligence officers utilizing official diplomatic cover. And now you have a 20-something Canadian systems engineer intern exploiting a siloed HR database.
So the recruitment strategy does not discriminate by rank or border?
No, it is diverse and relentless. They are continuously shaking every door handle to see which one is unlocked.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this deep dive? Why should we care about an intern getting arrested in Belgium?
It's a fair question for people to ask.
This story serves as a stark reminder about the illusion of security. We look at these massive multinational institutions like NATO or our own federal governments, and we assume they are impenetrable fortresses operating with flawless machine-like logic.
But those massive institutions are just comprised of people. They suffer from the exact same bureaucratic silos, the same lack of interdepartmental communication, and the same administrative blind spots that we experience in our everyday lives.
Right. I mean, if the human resources department does not communicate with the IT department at your local company, a new hire might not get a laptop on their first day.
Which is annoying, but fine.
But if the Public Service Commission does not communicate with the national security apparatus in the federal government, an individual with a recent fraud conviction gets handed the keys to the most sensitive military network on Earth.
It's terrifying. Background checks, no matter how rigorous they appear in a policy manual, are ultimately only as effective as the communication between the agencies running them.
Absolutely.
I want to leave you with one final, provocative concept to consider, one that really builds on the vulnerabilities we've discussed today.
Okay, what is it?
We've talked about human handlers recruiting vulnerable interns, but the digitalization of our world is about to remove the human element entirely. Consider the rapid advancement of artificial intelligence.
Oh, man. AI changes everything.
It really does. In the very near future, adversarial AI systems will be able to autonomously scrape massive federal HR data leaks, cross-reference them with public LinkedIn profiles, and instantly identify every young systems engineer with high student debt and a history of bureaucratic friction.
That is chilling. They wouldn't even need a human spy to find them.
Exactly. These AI systems could then autonomously initiate contact, offering financial incentives via untraceable cryptocurrency, and provide the specialized encryption software needed to exfiltrate data.
So it's fully automated espionage.
Yes. The true danger isn't just that an intern can bypass security. It is that adversarial AI will soon be able to map these blind spots and recruit vulnerable assets at scale, completely automating the espionage process before a human counterintelligence officer even knows the game has begun.
Wow. The physical battlefield is guarded by concrete and razor wire, but the digital backdoor is being mapped by algorithms and left wide open by broken background checks.
That's a brave new world.
It really is. That is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you, and we will see you next time.